And Leah, can I just confirm before we start, are the councillors unmuting themselves, or are you doing the unmuting?
I can help as well if they need any assistance. I can help them unmute.
So everybody can try to unmute themselves, and if it works out that it's not working, then Leah can help you. Is that okay? Everybody aware of that? Okay, it's 9:30, and I think that we can move to opening our committee meeting with all the councillors present. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Broadland District Council Planning Committee on Wednesday, the 7th of October, our virtual meeting. Thank you all to all our officers who enable these virtual planning meetings to progress. Hopefully everything will run smoothly, but please be patient if we should find a few gremlins in the works. We will endeavour to resolve any problems as quickly as possible. Our meeting today will be recorded and the meeting will be live streamed for public viewing on YouTube. The recording of this meeting will also be available on Broadland District Council's website. You should be aware any comments made in this meeting will be recorded indefinitely. Please can I ask everyone in attendance to ensure that when your microphones are unmuted, that you should try to keep the background noise to a minimum. Background noise can be very distracting from the discussion and information being relayed throughout the meeting. My name is Councillor Sue Vaughan. I'm the Chair of the Planning Committee. I will now ask our committee officer to proceed to a roll call for the other members of our planning committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Adams.
Here.
Councillor Beadle.
Here.
Councillor Brennan.
Present.
Councillor Fisher.
Here.
Councillor Folger. Councillor Folger, can you confirm you're here?
Okay, we'll
come back. Oh, no, we're here. Can you confirm you're in attendance, Councillor Folger?
You just need to unmute him, Leah.
I've asked for. Oh.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Folger. Councillor Karimi Guvanloo.
Here.
Councillor Holland. Sorry, I got you out of order.
Yes, here.
Councillor Lawn.
Here.
Councillor Moncur.
Here.
Councillor Prutton.
Present.
And Councillor Ward.
Present.
That's all 11 members in attendance, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. And also present with me today are officers Tracy Lincoln, Development Manager for Broadland and South Norfolk District Councils, Nigel Harris, East Area Team Manager for Broadland and South Norfolk District Councils, and our presenting officer today, Lee Arthurton from Democratic Services, who will be our host for today, and Don Matthews from Democratic Services, who will take and prepare the minutes of our meeting. Thank you. All members of the committee have received in advance paper copies of the agenda, presentation slides and public written submission for the application we will be considering today. At various points throughout the meeting, for example, in relation to questions and comments, I will do a roll call member to member in alphabetical order, requesting the committee's input. Today, I'm pleased to confirm we will have public speaking for this planning meeting. Only members of the public who have registered to speak in accordance with the Council scheme of public speaking will be able to address the committee. The time allocated is a maximum of 5 minutes per speaker per parish council. Please be aware there is no provision for members of the public to circulate documents or photographs at this meeting. The order of our meeting today will be as follows. The planning officer will present the key points for the application to the committee for their consideration. This will be followed by questions to the presenting officer from members of the committee in relation to the presentation. Public speakers will then be invited to address the committee. This again will be followed by questions to public speakers from members of the committee. I must emphasise these questions will only be to clarify something the speaker has said and not for the speaker to put further points across. The order of public speaking is parish town council first, followed by objectors, and finally supporters, i.e. the agent or the applicant. Council members who are not members of this committee will then be invited to speak for the allocated time of a maximum of 5 minutes each speaker. This again will be followed by questions from members of the committee. The committee will then discuss and determine the application with proposer and seconder for each of the applications we will consider today. Members will give their vote to the proposal by roll call. and our committee officer will relay the result of their votes to the meeting. Do we have any questions before we start? Okay, thank you. We will now move to our agenda, and at this point of our virtual meeting, I'd like to bring items 1, 3 and 4 together. Agenda item number 1 is to receive declarations of interest under procedural rule number 8. Agenda item number 3 is to confirm minutes on our previous meetings. Agenda item number 4 is matters arising therefrom. Members, Officer Matthews shall call your names in alphabetical order. Please advise if you have any declarations of interest, and please confirm if you agree to the minutes of the meetings held on the 9th and the 16th of September. And if I can just declare on behalf of the committee that we have all received emails in relation to application number 2. And if you could just please note that down, Officer Matthews, that we have all received the emails and they've all been noted. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So I will recall on behalf of all members present that you've all been lobbied in relation to that application. I'll record that in the declarations of interest, so members don't need to declare that individually as we go through. So if I could start with Councillor Adams.
No declarations of interest there, thank you, Chairman.
Are you happy with the minutes, Councillor Adams?
Perfectly, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Beadle.
No declarations, no matters arising. Happy with the minutes.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan.
Item 1 is in my ward. I've got no pecuniary interest. I have attended 2 parish council meetings prior to COVID, which the site was discussed, but I took no part in any of those discussions. I've had no discussion with the applicant or any other resident. Item 2 is also in my ward, no pecuniary interest, and again, no discussion with the applicant, parish council or any other resident. Matters fine, thank you, and no matters arising.
Thank you, Mr. Brennan. Councillor Fisher.
No declaration of interest, thank you, and I was not at the last planning meeting, so I can't confirm the minutes.
Thank you. Councillor Folger.
No declarations of interest. Happy with the minutes. No matters arising.
Thank you. Councillor Holland.
No declarations. I wasn't present at the last meeting, so I can't confirm on the minutes, I'm afraid.
Thank you. Councillor Karimi Guvenlu.
Yeah, minutes of meetings correct. I have been lobbied by the application number 3. I had an email from the architects, so I wanted to declare that.
Thank you.
And apart from that, no matters arising.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lawn.
No other declarations to declare, and I can confirm the minutes of the meetings, and there's no matter arising.
Thank you. Councillor Moncur. You're on mute, Councillor Moncur.
Sorry, no declarations of interest, wasn't present on the 9th or the 16th, and no matters arising.
Thank you. Councillor Prutton.
No declarations of interest, other than I had an email from the architect of application number 3. Approve the minutes, no matters arising.
Lovely, thank you. And Councillor Ward.
No declarations of interest. Happy with the minutes and no matters arising.
Thank you. That completes that, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Officer Matthews, and we can go to agenda item number 2, apologies.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got apologies from Councillors Grattan and Riley, and their substitutes are Councillors Holland and Brennan.
Okay, thank you. And we will move on to agenda item number 5, a schedule of applications. The first application today is application number 2020-0302, land east of 35 The Hill, Ranworth. And if I can just explain for the public information that how this section of the meeting will work today. This presentation will be presented by Officer Harris. Our officer will be sharing the screen throughout the presentation. Members will also have this presentation information via hard copies. Committee members, please ensure that you do not leave your screen at any time during the presentation, public speaking or discussion of an application. If you should need to leave for any reason, please give the reason for leaving to the host through the chat, and you will need to understand that you could then be in a situation where you are unable to vote on the application under discussion at the time of your absence. Please be advised if a member should lose connection for a period of time, the meeting will be adjourned until the member reconnects. Please note a member will be given a period of 5 minutes to reconnect before the meeting will resume. And if the member has not reconnected in the timescale allowed, he or she will not have a vote on the application under consideration at the time of losing connection. Members, can I advise you that on conclusion of this presentation, I will ask through a roll call if you have any questions in relation to this presentation. Could I please request, if you should have any further questions or comments after I've asked you in a roll call, would you please address these questions through chat, and our host Leah will bring it to my attention. We will now proceed to the presentation. Thank you, Officer Harris. Officer Harris, are you okay?
Yes, and just getting the screen ready. Can you see that first slide?
Yes, thank you.
Land to the east side of 35, the Hill, Ranworth. This is a part retrospective application, as the report indicates, and as you will see as we progress through the slides. So just put the site. This is the application site. It's on the east side of the hill. The hill runs through Ranworth in a north-south direction, and it starts to slope down from this point down towards where the Maltsters is and where Malthouse Broad is. That's probably clearer on the next slide, the aerial slide. So that's the application site tucked in this corner here. Open countryside that it adjoins. It's south of the car park to the Maltsters. That car park sits at a lower level because the site is actually elevated in relation to the hill, and you'll see that clearly in photographs that we will come to. So you've got the hill that runs in a north-south direction, comes to a junction at this point where the road turns left around the Maltsters, to the right to Farmlane that serves a handful of residential properties, a car park for the Norfolk Wildlife Trust, and then you've got the Granary Staithe opposite with some parking. There's a mooring cut and slipway into the Broad and public Staithe with no overnight parking in the Staithe car park. The crosshatched area is just to denote the area of the Broads Authority executive area, obviously equivalent national park status, and the site abuts the Broads boundary to the north and also on its east side as well. This is a block plan of the proposal. You've got a distinct change in level where the ground rises up to, I'd call it a plateaued area of the application site. There's already a cut that leads into the application site from the hill. You will notice from photographs that cabin 1 has already been constructed, but it's important to point out you've got 2 types of cabin. Cabin 1, gable end north-south, and another one repeated here, and another type of cabin that's turned at right angles to those other 2, and there's 2 of those. Importantly to note is this forward position of a WC cum shower block, and we'll come to that as to how elevated and prominent that's going to be in terms of views from the street scene, and also to note a viewing platform that's proposed in the northwestern corner of the site that has issues in terms of relationship with the neighbouring property opposite. Elevations, the top run is of the proposed WC shower block, lean-to roof of individual showers and WCs, and then the 2 different types of cabin. This middle row I'm indicating here, one of these has already been constructed on the site, which I pointed out on the block plan, and then this is the other type of cabin, so it's 2 of these and 2 of these as proposed. Closer view of the application site. So that site sits in here, a rectangular area of land. Put it in context, you've got the Maltsters Public House and its outdoor pub garden fronting onto the hill. You've got number 34, the Hill residential property with its large curtilage, and that's the relationship issue that we refer to in terms of being able to, or overlooking, the potential for overlooking from that viewing platform, roughly located in that position here. You've got a change in level. The site is much higher than the hill and also higher than the Malsters car park to the north. And you'll see the ridged roof. There's a toilet block located here. This is the Norfolk Wildlife Trust car park. And beyond this line here that I'm indicating, the level step down. So views back towards the site from the north, the site is quite prominent. This is looking down the hill. The application site is up at this level here. You can see how the land on the east side slopes down. It's effectively forming a cutting that the hill rides down in. It's effectively a single vehicle width road with informal passing spaces being utilised in terms of people's driveways. And the Broad in the distance in the background. A view from Farmlane. The application site sits up here. You can just make out, this is the gable end of that single cabin that's been constructed, but obviously you would see a run of cabins along here, and also the shower toilet block would be sitting quite prominent on the skyline. Closer view, there's some some bordered fencing to demark the boundary at the top of that embankment with the Malsters car park. There were some timber steps erected that potentially gave access from the Malsters car park to the site and vice versa, but they've now been removed from the site. This is the view from the hill, looking at that existing cut and change in level. There's quite a change in level, as I say, from the road up to the application site itself, and that's the existing means of enclosure which has been erected to secure the site. View looking at that point of vehicular end, or that point of entrance, I should say, into the site. And it's these banks that cause and restrict visibility to virtually nothing if that access were to be utilised for vehicular purposes. And then the site, and this is roughly the area of that shower toilet block. Obviously that hasn't been constructed, but would be quite prominent, as you can see. Looking from the opposite side again, you can see the embankment, which restricts visibility, whether it's for pedestrians, cyclists or vehicles entering or leaving that site. This is in the site, this is the area of, roughly the area of the shower block, and that's that first cabin that I refer to that is in a state of construction. This is the view, potential view from the viewing platform, and as you see, it can overlook and look towards the rear private curtilage of number 34, the hill. And then I'll leave members on that slide. So taking you to the report, the site is outside of a settlement limit, and as such, for the proposal to be acceptable in principle, it would have to comply with the requirements of policy E3 of your development management DPD relating to new tourism accommodation. The proposal does not comply with the requirements of this policy for the reasons clearly set out on page 31 of your agenda. As you've seen on the slides, the site is elevated, and this makes it both visually prominent and difficult to access. Consultation replies evidence this, and the proposal is considered unacceptable in terms of highway safety and impact on the character and appearance of the surrounding area. In addition, the proposal has an unacceptable impact on the amenities of a neighbouring property, 34 The Hill, in terms of potential for overlooking from a proposed viewing platform. Just want to pick something up for members in terms of page 20 of the agenda, where we've got the schedule of applications. In that, we refer to the officer recommendation on this application as being to refuse and to take enforcement action. What I need to remind members or advise them is that the Assistant Director for Planning does have delegated authority to exercise the Council's functions relating to planning enforcement. So if it is resolved to refuse this application, the resolution is not required to include and to take enforcement action. This action would in any event follow if the application is refused in order to seek to remedy the harm caused by the partial implementation of the development that's already carried out. So the recommendation before you is to refuse for the detailed and precise reasons set out on pages 35 and 36 of your agenda. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Officer Harris. Okay, members, do you have any questions in relation to the presentation for the officer, please? Okay, I can't see anybody asking, and if there's no one wishing to speak, I don't need to do a roll call. Okay, thank you. And this would be the point where we would normally go to public speaking. And unfortunately, we don't have any public speakers for this application. And if I can just confirm, we do not have any public speakers from the Parish Council, nor do we have any public speakers objecting or in favour of this application. So we will now go to discussion. Members, if you would like to unmute yourselves, we can go into open discussion in relation to this application in front of us. You will remain unmuted as a committee. And please can I ask, if you'd like to comment or ask a question of officers, please raise your request to do so in the chat or raise your hand and I will come to you in turn. And Leah will help me to keep track of what the turn will be. After this discussion, the committee will then determine the decision and the application on the proposal and seconding for the application. If necessary during the discussion, Officer Lincoln and Officer Harris will be able to respond to your questions accordingly. Do we have any comments that anyone would like to make in relation to this application, please?
Other than to move the officer's recommendation, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Beadle?
I second that.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. I'm just struggling with the chat function. Yes, it says in the report about the covenant in the deeds. Presumably, this has nothing to do with the planning application.
I can respond, Chair. You're quite correct, Councillor Beadle. The covenant is separate to the determination of the planning application.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Councillor Brennan, did you second that?
No.
I second it.
I'll second.
Councillor Fulcher?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Could I also ask, this piece of land, is it in one person's ownership separate to adjoining neighbours or adjoining properties?
Through you, Chair, yes, I believe it is in separate ownership.
Thank you.
Okay, any further comments or questions? No? Okay. Okay, if nobody has got anything that they wish to say or move on from this, I think that the presentation gave us everything that we needed to know, really, and we've got our papers as well. So if I can just advise the committee that it has been proposed by Councillor Adams and seconded by Councillor Fulcher that we should as a committee agree to the officer's recommendation to refuse this application for the reasons as stated in page 35 and 36 of your papers. Officer Matthews, could you please proceed to the roll call in alphabetical order? And if I can just advise, I'm sure that you'll do this as well, but advise that we're agreeing to refuse this application on the reasons as the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes. Thank you. So if I could just invite you to indicate if you are for or against the proposal to refuse the application. Councillor Adams.
For.
Councillor Beadle.
For.
Councillor Brennan.
For.
Councillor Fisher.
For.
Councillor Folger.
For.
Councillor Holland.
For.
Councillor Karimi Guvanloo.
For.
Councillor Lawn.
For.
Councillor Moncur.
For.
Councillor Pretton.
For.
Councillor Ward.
For.
Chairman, that's unanimous. That application is refused.
Lovely, thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much for that. And we can now move on to our second application. The application number is 2018-1183, Woodland Manor, Shet Lane, Blowfield. And again, Officer Matthews, if you could please proceed to the presentation.
Thanks, Chair. Just get the screen sharing. So hopefully you've got that opening slide, Woodlands
That's
Manor.
right.
Yep,
That's lovely, thank you.
good. So this is it's actually quite an old application, a 2018 application that followed a refusal of a similar proposal in 2017. I just want to say, I think some of the issues in terms of some of the emails that you members have received recently follows from this planning application, and probably some of the time delay that it's taken to bring it before members, and that I think some people are possibly under the impression that this is a new application that they haven't been notified of, but it's obviously an older application, 2018. There were a lot of representations, and I think majority, if not all, of the representations you have received through emails, we have already had comments from those individuals, and they are already summarised in your report. Also to indicate that there was a problem with the parish council originally submitting their comments to the district council in relation to this application. This was picked up by the case officer in pulling together this committee report, and that's why the parish council comments on this older application now sit within the supplementary schedule, because we didn't receive those until end of last week when they were sent to us. But obviously those comments were made some time ago by the parish council. So after that clarification, we go on to the first slide, just to put the site in context. So we're on the, excuse me. So technologies, let me just move that. Through remote access, things are a little bit slower. Excuse me. Right, if that stays. Okay, so the application site sits here. This is Shack Lane. It's a lane that runs pretty much parallel to the A47. The A47 at this point on the west side tends to sit in a bit of a cutting. The land levels are slightly lower on the southeast side on the main built-up part of Blowfield. You've got the main settlement of Blowfield here. You've got an area of land here, which is a scheme Hopkins Homes are building out to about 165 dwellings and some open space. There is a public footpath, which I will point out, which does actually come through the Hopkins Homes site. And if you want to take your chances, it crosses the A47 and comes through land from the A47 to Shack Lane. That public footpath actually passes through the application site, which is this yellow line here we're indicating. And that public footpath then runs northwards up to Holly Lane and beyond. So that's the application site. So Shack Lane.
Can I just interrupt? We have lost Councillor Fisher. Would you like to pause, Chairman?
Has he gone completely? He did notify us to say that he was just turning his video off because his internet connection isn't very good. Unfortunately, the area he lives in is not very good. Councillor Fisher, have you gone?
I think he's gone completely. I can't see him in the room.
Okay, if we can pause until he gets back. Sorry.
That's fine.
Is he back now?
Just let someone in. So let's hope that's Councillor Fisher.
No, I don't think that's him.
Pop that person back in the waiting room.
Yeah, I don't know who that could be.
Yeah, could you just ask who that is in the waiting room? Thank you. Oh, John Fisher's now waiting in the waiting room.
Okay. Okay, we're good to go again.
Good to go?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so this is the opening slide, which I was just referring to, the site location, obviously surrounded by open countryside, location of the site north of Shack Lane, talked about the public footpath that runs through the site. The nearest residential property is a property called Lone House, which is to the south of the application site. We move to the next slide. That's the application site, this area of land here. And what we have indicated just with these yellow dots is the majority of the objecting properties, which you will see are to the north, northwest, northeast of the application site. Prevailing wind will blow in a southwesterly direction, so coming from left to right on your screen. But we had objections from residential properties here and in this area here and on Bullis Bush Lane. So you've got Holly Lane properties, Shack Lane properties, and also properties on Bullis Bush Lane. Application site, we're looking at an area of land to the west of the main dwelling itself. Red House, formerly known as Red House, it's now Woodland Manor, sits in extensive curtilage. Part of the proposal is the change of use of this area of land here, which I'm just outlining, to residential curtilage. That was historically already contained within hedgerows with that public footpath running on its eastern side. And in landscape terms, that there are no issues in relation to that change of use. If the application had been just for that change of use, then we now have delegated powers to deal with change of use of agricultural land to domestic curtilage. The issue here is that the proposed incidental or private motocross track actually partly sits within that curtilage to be extended. And obviously that doesn't have a change of use granted for residential use yet. So the area that's being indicated here in turquoise is a reduced area of motocross track compared to that which you can see on the aerial views, etc. Primarily, it's to reduce the size of the track in relation to this buffer on the western boundary in terms of the proximity to Howes Meadow, the Category C wildlife site, to the southwest, and also to move the track away from established oak trees, particularly in this northwestern corner, and vegetation down in this southwestern corner as well. That vegetation acts as well as a biodiversity corridor in terms of picking up a travel route with that hedgerow down on this side into the wildlife meadow. And with that potentially reduced area of track, which we are suggesting can be conditioned, and with a mitigation as well, that the proposal doesn't impact on ecology. The other aspect in relation to this is obviously noise, which features quite heavily in relation to the report, which I'll come on to in detail, summing up at the end. That's aerial view of the application site. What you are seeing here is the extent of the track as historically has been set out. What I'm going to do is what we haven't done here is just outline roughly the areas where the track would be curtailed, but essentially the easternmost margin would come down at this point here, so reducing and taking out the area here, reducing the depth to the south, running along at the roughly along this line here to then skirt round and give a buffer to all of this vegetation on this western boundary. And that was that reduced area, which was, as I say, shown in turquoise on that previous slide, which you've got a copy of. That's the nearest residential property, which I refer to. If I can just move that, that's Lone Cottage. That's the nearest residential property here, which is to the south and sits quite close to the A47, as you can see. This is the point of access into the application site. And so what it's starting to pick up is some of that established vegetation on that western boundary with Howes Meadow. This is looking across the extent of the track as currently formed. Obviously, this is as currently exists on site, and the proposal is that this is scaled back in accordance with that revised plan. But what you can see is the established planting which also acts as screening, certainly to the south and west of the application site. This is then looking across towards the western boundary, looking due east back towards the applicant's existing property. And again, looking due south, the extent of the track. This is now taken more towards where the public footpath crosses through the application site. I think we are within the curtilage of the property, and the track itself is in the background here as indicated by the motocross track arrow. I refer to that established hedgerow along the northern boundary, and this is the area that is forming the proposed change of use to residential curtilage. You can see it's wholly contained within existing boundary screening, and these are some of the 60 native trees that the report refers to that the applicant has planted already. A distant view of the site from the north towards Holly Lane, what you can just make out here, which I'm indicating, is the line of the public footpath that disappears off into the distance. You can just make out here the residential properties under construction on the Hopkins Homes site on the other side of the A47. Essentially, the application site sits within this area here between the extent of these two arrows. So visually, you cannot see it in terms of featuring in the wider landscape. And I'll leave members on that slide, taking you to the report. So the application has been under consideration for some time, involving detailed negotiations on the noise impact, the extent of area of the motocross track, and also ecological enhancements following an earlier refusal of planning permission in February 2018. It's probably important to note and to point out to members that obviously that the application in 2017 followed actual on-site works in relation to formation of this track. So we are getting close to the period of 4 years after which potentially these engineering works could become lawful if not determined by way of a planning application. In respect of noise, a detailed noise assessment has been carried out, which has been studied by the Council's Environmental Management Officer, who has also been out to site when the track has been in use, and he has witnessed this in operation both on-site and off-site, close to some of the neighbouring and objecting properties. His comments are referred to in paragraph 4.5 on pages 41 and 42 of the report, and the case officer has assessed these in detail on pages 44 and 45 of the report. Members are reminded of the 6 tests regarding the use of conditions as referred to in the National Planning Policy Guidance, and that paragraph 54 of the NPPF indicates that local planning authorities should consider whether otherwise unacceptable development could be made acceptable through the use of conditions. In this respect, and subject to the conditions as proposed that require a reduction in the track area and restrictions on its use, the proposal is considered acceptable. In terms of ecology, this is dealt with in detail in the paragraph or in paragraphs on page 45 of the report, and in combination with the existing planting that has been carried out, the proposed reduction in extent of track area and additional planting that is recommended in the suggested conditions, the proposal is not considered harmful to ecology or biodiversity. So I acknowledge that this item is finely balanced. You have before you a lot of representations in terms of the noise impact. Just to repeat that side of things has been looked at in detail through the submission of a noise assessment and in terms of on-site assessment and observations from your council's environmental health officer. Overall, he did not believe that the impact of the proposal would be so significant that we could refuse planning permission, subject to the control that we are seeking through the proposed conditions. So on that basis, the application is recommended for approval as set out on page 47 of the agenda. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Officer Harris. And members, do we have any questions for the officer in relation to that presentation? Okay, if you don't mind, there is a few hands up. So if you don't mind, I'll just go through as a roll call, if that's okay. Okay, and Councillor Adams, do you have anything that you would like to say? Or ask a question? It's just in relation to the presentation at the
No
moment.
questions at this stage, Madam
Okay,
Chairman.
thank you.
Might have some points to make later on.
That's absolutely fine. Councillor Beadle?
No, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Brennan?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, good morning again, Nigel. I see it clearly states in the application that it's a private motocross track. Can that in some way be enshrined so it doesn't become a business at some point in the future if we do decide to go with the recommendation?
Certainly, yes. I mean, we are dealing with this on the basis that it's an incidental use, i.e., it's for the benefit of the householder. I wouldn't say that that necessarily precludes, say, the applicant using the track and together with a friend. You know, an incidental use permits people to come around to other people's properties, but what it wouldn't allow is for this to be used as a commercial track with outside people coming to use motorbikes on that site.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fisher, do you have any questions at the moment in relation to the presentation? And Councillor Fulcher, do you have any questions in relation to the presentation?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Karimi Givenloo, do you have any questions in relation to the presentation just now?
Yeah, I just wondered, under the recommendations on page 47, there's no condition on here about the opening of the public footpath. Is that something we can add? Because I understand it's closed at the moment.
That's not my understanding. As far as I'm aware, the footpath is open. In any event, if the applicant the footpath doesn't come within the area that we're considering the planning application, so this track doesn't foul that public footpath. If for any reason that footpath has been obstructed, then that would be for the county council to enforce as the authority dealing with public rights of way.
Okay, it just says in the supplementary schedule that the parish council noted the public footpath had been blocked by the landowner.
I think that yeah, I think, as I said at the beginning, that those comments from the parish council are over 12, 18 months old now, because they were made in relation to when the application was originally submitted. I think there was an issue that the landowner was seeking to get the footpath diverted so that it passed outside of his property and not through the curtilage of his property. As I believe that's been resolved now.
Okay,
but
that's
not. I don't think that's the current situation.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Holland? Do you have any questions?
No questions, thank you.
And Councillor Moncur? No?
No, everything's fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Ward?
Yeah, just a couple of things, please. Nigel, you mentioned sort of engineering works. Well, there doesn't look to be much engineering works there. It just looks like some motorbikes have been driving around a field. And does one really need permission to drive your own motorbike around your own field?
I think what you've seen on the photographs, the course changes over time, and I don't think it's been overly used recently. There's also been a lot of rain recently, which I think has flattened the course or the track that had been set out. The report does set out that we're seeking an extent of area for the track to be within, and that normally with these types of tracks, the applicant would seek to remodel them every so often to create different challenges. So I think what you see at the moment isn't the extent of the engineering operations that were originally there. And it's the engineering operation that requires the use, because it is still within the curtilage of the residential property. So use is incidental, but it was the degree of engineering that those works required permission.
Okay, thank you. Just one more question, please, if I may. I may have missed it, but is the permission limited to two motorcycles? Because it says you could have incidental, and if this lad brings 5 of his friends around, there could be 6 motorbikes going around there. But
yeah, no, we are proposing. Just turning my pages on page 47. Yes,
Yeah.
thank you, Councillor.
Condition
Only
6.
2 bikes to use the track at any one
Yeah,
time.
okay, fine, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Apologies, Councillor Plotton. Do you have some questions, please?
My first one has been dealt with. That was about the public right of way. And my second question here is concerning conditions 5 and 6. Number 6 particularly, only 2 bikes to use the track at any one time. Right, you can monitor the fact that it's happening between 10 and 4, but in what way can this be monitored, or is this a matter of just trust between you and the applicant?
I think with things like this in relation to noise, that if the use was occurring outside of those times, then it's likely to be brought to our attention by some of those residents who have actually made comment on this planning application. It also doesn't stop. It also doesn't stop the council actively monitoring as well outside of those times if necessary.
It was the number of bikes, you know, I mean, you can hear whether it's, you know, between 10 and 4, but you can't necessarily count the bikes. So that's just something we've got to live with until the complaints get too great.
If, say, we have powers to turn up unannounced, if we wish to inspect, you know, if noise subsequently, if this is approved and we are getting complaints in relation to noise, then obviously we would investigate and seek to work with the applicant if we have evidence that actually they are using more than 2 bikes.
Okay. I am reassured.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further questions?
Sorry, Sue, can I just come in?
Yes, Councillor Woodward?
Nigel, sorry. So have we had any complaints in?
Yes, it was complaints that originally led to the submission of the planning application, i.e. the track was formed in about end of 2016, which led to the application coming in 2017 seeking to regularise it. So yes, we did have complaints originally before the first planning application was made.
Okay,
but I think,
so is there much recently? Is this why this has been brought forward now?
No, time has taken in terms of getting the submission of the noise assessment to accompany the planning application, the detailed assessment of that, and time in terms of bringing it before members. But I'm not aware personally myself of there being complaints recently, but I know in some of the email correspondence we had coming in from Monday onwards this week that people have alluded to there being noise coming from that track within the past few months.
Okay,
but Nigel, can I just ask, the 19 letters of objection and the petition, were they submitted in the previous application or were they submitted for this application?
They were submitted in relation to this application.
Okay,
so
we can always come back to discussion, and Nigel and Tracy will both be here to answer any questions, but I just want to go through the protocol as we should do it. So if you are happy that I can just go through as protocol allows. So we would normally go to public speaking at this moment in time, but we don't have any public speakers. And unfortunately, I can confirm that we don't have any public speakers from the Parish Council, nor do we have any public speakers objecting or in favour of this application. So if you could all just be aware that you have received your emails from the residents, and you obviously will take all of those into consideration. But if I can just ask that we now, everybody on mute, and if you could please have an open discussion. And as I said, Officer Harris and Officer Lincoln are here to answer any further questions that you might have. So Councillor Adams, did you say that you wanted to maybe make a comment?
No, not at this stage, Madam Chair.
Okay, sorry, Councillor Smalley, did you have any more that you want to say?
No.
So, was you addressing me, Chair?
Councillor Beadle, do you have something that you want to say?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to say, I'm a bit reassured about the officer's reassurance of the potential for enforcement action.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ward?
Yes, thank you. I know we've heard that the noise probably doesn't break the legal limits, but these sort of trail bikes have got a very sort of high-pitched, irritating noise, and it carries a very long way. It carries miles, I would suggest, as I've found for myself. I certainly wouldn't want to live next to something like this or with anywhere near it. So I can see why people are objecting to it, and I would like to move refusal on the grounds of noise.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ward.
I'm happy to second that.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you very much. Councillor Ward, Councillor Moncur. Do we have any further comments? Councillor Karimi?
The parish council have said all bikes must be fitted with sound suppressors. Is that something that we can enforce or not to reduce the noise?
Through you, Chair, that was looked at by the Environmental Management Officer, and there's a difficulty there in terms of sound suppressors, as I understand it, depending on the types of bikes that are used, and also it's something that's likely to create a very overly complex sort of monitoring issue as to monitoring as to whether every bike that runs on that site has a suppressor or a baffle fitted. What I would indicate, and as I started out in the presentation, sometimes with planning conditions we can't go into the level of detail necessarily that other legislation can pick up, and I would point out that obviously if there were to be a statutory nuisance created by this use, if it were permitted, then there is action that the environmental health officers could take under Section 79 of the Environmental Protection Act. I do want to qualify, however, that the EHO has indicated in paragraph 4.5, and in relation to being on site when bikes have been running and also being off site close to Holly Lane when bikes are being running, that he does not consider that it gives rise to a statutory nuisance. What he has indicated in discussion with myself is if there were to be an issue that we cannot enforce under the proposed planning conditions, there is another set of environmental health legislation that sits beneath that of a statutory nuisance, which is the potential for a community protection notice, which could apply conditions in relation to use if the use were giving rise to noise nuisance over and above what could be controlled through the proposed planning conditions. So there is, to a certain extent, another level of legislation that could be utilised in relation to this site if a nuisance was occurring and was evidenced and witnessed in relation to this use. So we can only go so far in terms of the level of conditions, and what's before you today has been discussed at some length with both our planning compliance officer, planning enforcement officer, and also the environmental health officer, and we feel they're the best we can achieve through the requirements of planning legislation, but obviously to make members aware that there is other legislation out there that's available should a nuisance occur.
Okay,
He also does say that the motorbike's noise is clearly audible above the A47 noise, and I would agree with Councillor Brennan that motorbike noise is very loud, as I have motorbikes go past my house.
Yes. Oh, okay, thank you. Councillor Holland?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify something. Is the reason that we're looking at this in part because of the change of use of that piece of land? Is that why this has come to planning anyway?
It's the extent of the engineering operations and also a little bit of the change of use, because part of the engineering works currently fall outside of the defined residential curtilage of the property. That slide I showed with that rectangular length of the northern part of the site was formerly agricultural land, and that's proposed to be changed to residential, and part of that track falls within that currently undetermined area for change of use. So yes.
I see. And the other thing that concerns me slightly is that it's talking about reducing the size of the track, but you've already said that these things tend to change. I mean, I guess possibly in part in the way they're used. So my worry would be that although they are going to reduce the size, there is still potential, presumably, for them to extend it again by virtue of the way they use it. Would that be able to be monitored?
It would be, yes. I mean, through condition 2, we're seeking that the track area be reduced within 3 months of an approval if it is given, and there's a defined area, and that can easily be measured on site if we were led to believe that it had encroached beyond that consented area.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Sorry, just coming back to the proposal, please, Nigel. As Councillor Holland has alluded to, it's a change of use of agricultural land to residential curtilage and the private motocross track. Do we have to take those two together, or can we consider the motocross track and the change of use to residential separately? Because I don't see any reason why we should deny the change of use of agricultural land to residential within the diagrams that you've shown us, because that would appear to just be trying to increase the size for potential future residential development. Do they have to be taken together?
They do, although in terms of as you go forward, if there's an unacceptable element that members want to vote on, it's likely to be in relation to the track and not the change of use for the curtilage. We don't have an issue with the curtilage, and possibly members don't either. But at the moment, it's all part of one application. Okay. And right, if it's refused, then obviously that would fail.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Councillor Fisher.
Yeah, I think this is difficult, because I can understand the point people are making about the noise. On the other hand, when you look at the conditions that have been suggested by the officers, the fact that it's taken 3 years to come to committee anyway, really because of 3 years of negotiation, and I as I say, that there is other legislation. We've got environmental health. The EAGO has indicated the acceptance of us, and if it gets outside of those limits, then there can then be action taken. It is difficult, but generally speaking, I think with the controls and the conditions the officers are proposing, I'm inclined to think we should be supporting this particular application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else before I just. Okay. I just want to
Councillor Adams, sorry.
Councillor Adams, I do apologise. You go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, I've been going through the MPPF, and personally, I think there is quite a lot in here which actually mitigates against this. But in particular, I'm looking at on page 38 of the MPPF, and paragraph 127. Which says planning policies and decisions should ensure that development will function well and add to the overall quality of the area. Sorry, I'm not convinced that a cycle track is going to add in any shape, size or form to the quality of the overall quality of the area. And this is not just for the short term, the MPPF goes on, but over the lifetime of the development. So I don't believe in any shape, size or form that this application meets 127A. B, are visually attractive as a result of good architecture, layout and appropriate and effective landscaping. Again, I don't believe that complies with 127B of the MPPF. We go on C, are sympathetic to local character and history, including the surrounding built environment and landscape setting, though it does say while not preventing or discouraging appropriate innovation or change, but that relates really basically to increased density. So again, I don't think it meets 127A, B or C of the MPPF, Madam Chairman. So therefore, you know, I will put forward those as additional reasons for refusal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Lincoln, if you, Officer Lincoln, apologies, I've picked you into a councillor. Is there anything that you would like to add before we go to the vote?
Yeah, I mean, perhaps Nigel, can we just clarify in terms of some of those noise issues, what would be what your motion to refuse that is on noise? So is that neighbour amenity? Is that impact on the peaceful enjoyment of the public right of way? I mean, Nigel might want to just pick up on some of those things just so we're clear as to what we would be voting on.
Thank you, Tracy. I mean, if it is noise, then obviously it's the noise generated on site that impacts on amenities off site, which would be GC4 and EN4 in relation to noise pollution. I would hesitate, Councillor Adams, to introduce this having a wider landscape impact, because I think, as the slides demonstrated, the site is wholly self-contained and visually you don't see the track externally. I appreciate that the use of the site may impact externally, but I don't think we can introduce a visual or landscape impact reason for refusal. I think if you are looking at a refusal, it would solely come down to noise impact.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I just want to just to say that I have to say that I do agree with Councillor Adams and Councillor Ward and Councillor Moncur. I don't feel this is appropriate. This is appropriate use of that site, as Officer Harris has just said. GC4 and EN4, I think, are approved. That's the reason for the refusal back in 2017. I think that still absolutely stands. I don't think that the noise of a motorbike hasn't changed in that time, really. So I think for the residents, and again, as Councillor Greeney said, I live quite close to a site where we are constantly having motorbikes, especially in the summertime, and that really is a little bit of a nightmare. I think we've just lost Councillor Carini, and I think that she wanted to speak. So if we can just give her a few minutes to come back in again. Has she gone completely, Leah?
Yeah, she's left, but I'll keep an eye out on the wait room to let her in.
Okay, so yeah, I don't necessarily think this is the right way for us to be going, and I would happily use CG4 and EN4 to put my case forward. Has anybody else got anything to say while we're waiting for?
No, I think that.
Councillor Queenie will just give us a few minutes, and then once she's back, I think that if nobody's got anything, maybe we can go to the vote on this one.
Yeah, I guess perhaps we just want to clarify as well, are we just going with noise impact? And I would probably add para 180A of the MPPF in relation to that noise impact. It'd be GC4, EN4 and para 180A. And or are we voting on that landscape impact motion by Councillor Adams?
If it helps, I will withdraw those two, even though I think it does support the refusal. But if it helps, Madam Chairman, I will withdraw the two MPPF paragraphs that I read, or 3 paragraphs I read out.
Okay, and it was Councillor Ward and Councillor Moncur who proposed and seconded it. So, Councillor Ward, are you happy to go with CG4 and EN4? Noise and pollution.
Yes.
Is that acceptable to Councillor Moncur?
Yes, it is.
Okay, Councillor Creamy, sorry, you were wanting to speak and we lost you. Would you like? Did you want to say something, Councillor Creamy? I thought you had your hand up before.
Sorry, no, I lost connection just for a minute and I'm back again.
Okay. So so I'm happy that we should go to the vote, and it has been proposed by Councillor Ward, seconded by Councillor Moncur, that we should, as a committee, refuse this application against the officer's recommendation, and the reasons that we're going to put forward for the recommendation to refuse, if I'm just correct, is CG4 of the Development Management Plan and EN4 of the Environment Plan. Is that correct?
Yes,
GC4, yes,
GC4.
and EN4 in terms of noise pollution, yes, and para 180A of the MPPF.
180A. Okay, so Officer Matthews, if I could please ask you to go to the vote for this application, and if you can just be aware that we are voting to refuse the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Chairman. So if I could ask members to indicate if you are for or against the proposal to refuse the application. Councillor Adams?
For.
Councillor Beadle?
Against.
Councillor Brennan?
For.
Councillor Fisher?
Against.
Councillor Folger?
For.
Councillor Holland?
Against. I'm afraid I feel that the policies that have been put forward by the officer are correct.
Councillor Karimi Guvenlu?
For.
Councillor Lawn?
For.
Councillor Moncur?
For.
Councillor Prutton?
For.
And Councillor Ward?
For.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3. Chairman, I make that 8 members voting for and 3 against.
Okay, thank
So
you.
that recommendation for refusal is carried.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, that brings that application to a close, and I would like to offer that we have a 5-minute comfort break, and if we could all please be back here for 10:40, if that's okay. Thank you. We're just waiting for a couple of councillors to return, and then we can carry on with our meeting. When Councillor Beadle turns his video on, we will proceed with the roll call, and then we will carry on with the meeting. Okay, I think that we're all in attendance now, and if I could just ask Officer Matthews, please, to do a roll call.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Adams.
Yeah.
Councillor Beadle.
Present.
Councillor Brennan.
Present.
Councillor Fisher.
Here.
Councillor Folger.
Present.
Councillor Holland.
Present.
Councillor Karimi Guvenlu.
Present.
Councillor Lawn.
Present.
Councillor Moncur.
Here.
Councillor Prutton.
Present.
Councillor Ward.
Present.
All present, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. We will now move on to application number 3, 2020-00981. Apologies, I have too many zeros in there. 2020-0981, Walled Garden, Villa, Cotteshall. And can I just confirm, Leah, that we have the public speakers for this application online? Councillor Copplestone, Mike Chapman, Debbie Sherman, and Kristen Lambert.
Present, Chair. Thank you.
Yes, we do. Yeah.
Lovely, thank you very much. And we will go to Officer Harris for the presentation, please.
Thanks again, Chairman. Let's just get the screen shared. So you should be reading Walled Garden, Beela Green Lane, Coultershall. Erection of a dwelling, greenhouse, garage, landscaping and access. So that's the, put the sign context, that's the built form of Horsted and Coultershall. And the red line depicts the outline of the settlement limits for both those parishes. The site is outside to the east of the nearest settlement limit, as you see, location of the site marked. Again, the site is within the Coultershall Conservation Area boundary. You can see the extent, quite a wide-ranging conservation boundary that encompasses parts of the parish, the adjoining parish of Horsted, and also quite an extent of land within the Broads Authority area. And that Broads Authority boundary actually comes quite close and in fact adjoins the southern edge of the application site. So we are within Coultershall Conservation Area, obviously of heritage importance. Aerial view, so that's the application site, the extent of the walled garden marked, track that leads from Beela Green Lane to provide vehicular access. Historically, the walled garden and the adjoining land were sort of a parkland setting and functional setting to Coultershall Hall. And you'll see a slide of that closer up soon. But the Coultershall Hall is just in this location here. So in terms of vehicular access, Beela Green Lane comes down to Wroxham Road, and obviously eastwards heads off to parish of Wroxham, but then back into the village heading west with the usual amenities and services, etc. Closer view of the application site. What we have just identified here are nearby heritage assets in the form of Grade 2 listed buildings. That's Caldershall Hall. Originally, Caldershall Hall was a much larger estate that encompassed a lot of the land around it, including the walled garden, woodland and fields around, which were part of a parkland setting. You've also got two other nearby listed buildings off White Line Road. The red line, blue line drawing. So the red line is the extent of the application site. The blue land is land owned by the applicant, but which doesn't form part of this current planning application. That's the extent, the existing extent of the walled garden where vehicular access comes into it. There are existing sort of horticultural type buildings within the walled garden and an existing package treatment plant for dealing with foul water to the north of the site, and that's picked up in the supplementary schedule. So a block plan to indicate the location of the proposal. It's in, call it this northeastern quadrant of the walled garden. Vehicular access coming in at this point here. Proposed garage building, keeping the functional and servicing elements of the building in this part of the site. It's been located to maximize solar gain, etc., in terms of the eco credentials of the property to help generate heat and energy as part of its construction through the layout. You've also got a proposed greenhouse here butting up to the northern wall of the walled garden. Elevations of the property, bit difficult here to sort of show the whole property in context through the submitted elevations, but hopefully you've seen the paper copies of those. What I will lead on to is the CGI's, computer generated images of the proposal. This is at a low level looking across to the property. It's a single story property using this sort of battery formation of pitched roofs on this sort of half crescent formation, primarily located, as I say, to maximize solar gain for part of the eco credentials of the property. Greenhouse over here on the northwest side. The existing entrance into the walled garden, which will be the vehicular entrance to serve the property, and then the garage building is located on this side here. You'll see that clearer in this sort of bird's eye perspective. This is all about bringing and giving a viable use to the walled garden, which is a building of heritage significance, albeit it's an undesignated heritage asset. And this will bring the walled garden back into a viable reuse and ensure the longevity and preservation of the solid red brick walls as well. So that's the, let's say, the bird's eye formation, vehicular access coming in here, the servicing elements in relation to garaging and some undercover parking here, a sunken garden to the face of the dwelling, and then restoring the walled garden in terms of a functional, productive space in the remaining 3/4 of it, and that's the glass house that's referred to. Looking at the point of vehicular access from Beeler Green Lane, looking across the open fields, there's an existing track that comes around the outer edge of the field that leads to that walled garden. This is the back of Caldershall Hall, and actually that's the back of the Broads Authority area's jurisdiction. So you can see the walled garden as a feature, certainly in terms of the long distance views, and then the track that leads to the application site. And that's the walled garden. This is the eastern boundary with the existing vehicular entrance where you've got these buttresses. This is inside the walled garden, again looking back out. Again, those restored buttresses to the walled garden. Clear that. So the location of the property is roughly in this area here, which was that sort of northeastern corner of the site. Quite a large area, as you see. That's the northern wall. that indicates where some of the existing preservation and making good of the wall has been carried out by the applicant. Looking due west, these were some of the sort of functional, I'd call them sort of horticultural buildings in that northwestern corner. So you get an appreciation as well as to how big this site area is and how potentially this site will be utilised and preserved in the future. That's then looking at the southern boundary, vegetation on that, and obviously part of the proposal that we're seeking to achieve here is the restoration and preservation of that wall, and obviously that will involve careful removal of the vegetation, repointing, etc., probably patching of brickwork to help restore it for the long term. Examples of the condition when the applicant took the wall on in terms of ownership in 2014. And some before and after. It's ongoing maintenance and obviously still work to be done. I'll leave members on that slide. Important to say, although the application submitted before you today was submitted under the auspices of Para 79E of the MPPF, and that's where the design has to be of exceptional quality, the officer's report takes members through each of those 4 criteria and makes it clear that the proposal does not meet the high bar of meeting all 4 criteria, and so is not considered acceptable under this paragraph, and that's paragraph 79E. However, in this particular case, there are considered significant other material considerations in the form of the walled garden. That is considered a building of heritage significance, and it is considered that the proposed development will give the walled garden a viable use, ensuring its long-term preservation. The commentary on page 63 of the report indicates this significant benefit, and on pages 80 and 81 of the supplementary schedule in point 1, it is further qualified that in this regard, the proposal can be supported as it is considered to comply with paragraph 79B of the MPPF, and that's where the development would represent the optimal viable use of a heritage asset or would be appropriate enabling development to secure the future of a heritage asset. I would further draw members' attention to points 2, 3 and 4 in the supplementary schedule, and in particular point 3 relating to permitted development rights and proposed removal of the right to demolish walls. Obviously that's important here, bearing in mind that's the key feature that is the driver for this application in terms of finding a viable use for that walled garden and retention of it in the future. The report concludes that the long-term retention of the walled garden as a non-designated heritage asset is a significant material consideration that is considered in this particular instance to outweigh the harms of the site being located outside of a settlement limit. Approval is recommended as set out on page 68 of the agenda, with the addition as referred to in point 3 of the supplementary schedule, which related to removal of PD rights in relation to demolition of walls. That concludes presentation, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Officer Harris. And members, can I ask, do you have any questions in relation to the presentation before we go to public speaking? No, I don't see anybody raising any hands. So that will take us on to our public speaking. And I can just advise you that we don't have any representations from the Parish Council, nor do we have any members of the public who wish to voice their objection. However, we do have members of the public who want to speak in support of this application. And today we have Mike Chapman, who's the applicant, Debbie Sherman, agent, and Kristen Lambert, the architect. Officer Lincoln, can I ask you please to unmute Mr. Chapman? Mr. Chapman, thank you for attending this morning. And can I just ask, did you want all 3 of the your group to speak for 5 minutes, or are you happy to start with yourself, and then if there's any questions, or would you like everyone to speak for 5 minutes?
No, everyone will be speaking for 5 minutes, please.
Perfect. Okay, that's lovely. So I just need to explain to you that we don't have a clock that I won't, hopefully I don't have to repeat this, but we don't have a clock that we can show you for your 5 minutes. but we have got the host who will advise you whenever you have 1 minute left remaining. Is that acceptable to you?
That's fine, thank you.
Okay, unfortunately, if we showed a clock, then we would lose you, and we don't want to do that. So if you could please introduce yourself to the committee, and you will have 5 minutes starting from now.
Good morning, everyone, Planning Committee members. My name is Michael Chapman, and I am the applicant and owner of the walled garden adjacent farmland and woodland. I'm not a good off-the-cuff speaker, so hopefully you will bear with me while I read a short additional statement I've prepared. The old Cotteshall Hall walled garden is a fantastic place. It has its own microclimate and a feeling and presence that is difficult to describe. Its walls clearly show all the different phases that it has gone through over the past 2 centuries. It has its place in history and deserves to be looked after by way of having a useful purpose. A home there will utilise all that the garden has to offer. It is why the walled garden was built in the first place. A home there would break its current isolation from the wider local community. For the past 75 years, little was done to look after the walled garden, and it was allowed to deteriorate up to a point where it could easily be argued that it was past the point of saving. Close on 6,000 work hours later, over a period of 5.5 years and at a cost of several tens of thousands of pounds, I can now say in confidence that the walled garden is now here to stay, at least for a few more years. Lots still need to be done, and it will need ongoing care and maintenance in the years ahead. Whilst working on the wall, you are constantly thrown curveballs which need to be dealt with. All repairs have been done so that the original design and features of the wall are maintained. All this takes copious amounts of time and materials. Not having too onerous a timetable for all that needs to be done or still to be done would be prudent. This aspect of any permission granted concerns me, as mentioned by way of the proposed condition 10 initials NS. For the work to be done properly, you have to have a lot of patience. All my work, you could say, would account for nothing if planning permission for a home there is not granted. The real possibility would then exist that the garden would once again enter a period of decay and deterioration out of the sight of everyone. This would be a real shame. I personally cannot see anyone else being prepared to look after and maintain the walled garden going forward, because why would they? They would not have a logical reason to do so. I thank you for your time and attention, and would gladly answer any questions or queries that anyone might have.
Okay, thank you. And members, can I ask if anybody has got any questions for our speaker this morning? No, that's lovely. Thank you very much, Mr. Chapman.
Oh,
we will now move on.
Councillor Ward has his hand raised. Sorry.
I'm sorry, Councillor Ward, I didn't see that.
Yes, yes, thank you, Mr. Chapman. I'm just going to ask, are you intending to live in the house yourself, please?
I am indeed.
Thank you.
I farm the farmland and look after the woodland, where I'm hopefully turning it into a truffery.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, and now if we could please move to Officer Atherton, if you could unmute Debbie Sherman, please. Hi, Debbie. Thank you very much for attending this morning. If you could please, you're aware that unfortunately you have 5 minutes. We don't have a clock, and the host will advise you when you have 1 minute to go. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, if you could please introduce yourself, and you have 5 minutes from now.
Thank you. Good morning, members. I'm Debbie Sherman. I'm the planning agent from One Planning Consultants. So first of all, we wanted to welcome the recommendation of approval and thank officers for their positive engagement during the determination process. You will have seen that there's overwhelming support for the scheme from the Parish Council, the CPRE, the Broads Authority and local residents. We acknowledge that officers agree, as set out in both the main and supplementary report, that this exemplar scheme is justified in this location and it complies with the requirements of paragraph 79B insofar as it will achieve the optimal viable use for this locally important heritage asset and secure its future going forward. And we also note that the officer report acknowledges that 3 of the 4 aspects necessary to comply with paragraph 79E are also met. I'll just recap those. First of all, that it would raise standards in the area as a consequence of its unique design and construction, that it would significantly enhance its immediate setting by facilitating the return of the walled garden into a viable use, ensuring its long-term preservation and protection, as you've just heard Mr. Chapman describe, and that it would be sensitive to the defining characteristics of the area as a result of its minimal visual impact that respects the significance of this important heritage asset. Compliance with the remaining aspect of the scheme relating to its outstanding or innovative credentials will be set out by the architect, Crispin Lambert. So I do not intend to repeat or deal with any aspects that he's going to raise. But I hope you will, having heard him, exercise your judgment and agree that our proposal meets with all aspects of Part E of paragraph 79. So leading on from this positive recommendation, I just wanted to provide you with a little more information on what the applicant has already undertaken since he purchased the site in 2017. You've heard what he's had to say this morning, but I just wanted to reiterate really, it has been a labour of love on his part, and he estimates that there are still a number of years' work required to complete the restoration. Our client is carrying out the works himself and has developed a high level of time-served expertise. He's using traditional materials such as lime, cement, and is salvaging and reusing bricks wherever possible. As you've heard this morning, he's entirely committed to completing its restoration. We note the various conditions which are proposed to protect the historic integrity of the site, and we do not object to those conditions. But we would ask, particularly in relation to condition 10, that the condition is phrased in such a way that takes account of the fact the applicant is doing the work himself, and therefore the wording of that condition enables him to complete the project without being unduly onerous. We would suggest, therefore, that a schedule of works is agreed as part of that condition, and that would then take account of the circumstances described to you today. Overall, we hope that you agree our scheme meets all the necessary tests set out in both national and local policy, and that planning permission will be granted. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Members, do you have any questions for the public speaker? No. Okay, thank you very much for your time. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Officer Arthurton, if I could please ask you to unmute Crispin Lambert, please. Hello, Mr. Lambert. I'm sure that you're aware of the timescale, and you will have 5 minutes with an interruption at 1 minute to go. Is that okay with you?
That's fine. Thank you very much.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. If you could just introduce yourself, please, and you have 5 minutes from now.
Thank you very much. My name's Crispin Lambert. I'm the architect on the scheme, and I'd like to thank you for the opportunity of talking to you now. And I really wanted to just set out to you some of the premises that we've looked at when designing this scheme. The first thing we went back into was the history of walled gardens in the United Kingdom and the technological, the horticultural, the scientific advances that they actually encompassed themselves. The skills that came about through the propagation of the plants, the grafting, the bringing forward of certain rare and exotics, vegetables, and of course, plants from around the world that were seen as being special. The walled garden has a place in history as being a thing of innovation and skill. Walled gardeners, there was a head gardener within a walled garden who would have great skills at bringing these things together. In the design, we wanted to take those ideas and take that forward to the future at this very important time in our history at the moment, where energy and conservation and sustainability are so key to all of us now. And what we've done is develop a building that uses very, very sustainable features. And I'll briefly go over those for you now, although you probably read them. But starting with the location of the building, as has been said, it's located in the corner of the site to maximize solar gain for the building, both in photovoltaic, the generation of electricity, and indeed in natural solar gain to the building, using that heat within the building to heat the occupants. We're also using ground source heating within the garden itself in a shallow loop. And the form of the building reflects very much the tradition of big vineries within a walled garden of the period of the 18th century. So that means a building that stands forward of the external walls and actually has the construction of a boiler room behind it. This was done at Fulham Palace and in other locations. So there are strong historical references for that building within the garden. We also know that buildings within walled gardens were very common and were a standard feature. And this picks up on those references of building within a walled garden. In terms of the construction, I'll briefly go over this. The excavation for the building, which is required to bring the building's height down a bit, you saw from the images that it sits just within the top of the walled garden, so it's not really visible from outside. We have kept all that soil that's spoil in effect within the walled garden, and that's used for the raised beds. The gardens and the grounds are completely reconstructed, so the biodiversity, the bees, the wildlife will all come back into this location. The foundations of the building are made of a very light cementatious system called limecrete, which is very green in terms of cement-based products. The insulation in the slab is recycled glass, so it's recycled glass windscreens and put down in a very ecological way. But the most important thing is the construction of the building is hemp. Hemp is a product that is a natural grass. It holds carbon as it grows, and when
1 minute remaining.
Thank you very much. The hemp is very good at sequestering the carbon. We are also using hemp bats in the roof to sustain the roof. The solar gain is controlled through adjustable brise soleil, and there will be a control system that brings together the photovoltaic and indeed the battery system for the storage of energy, the ground source heating, and indeed control the warmth within the house. So, so many things have gone into it. We believe it's an exemplar. We believe it's unique. We don't believe that the concept of recycled timber used within a hemp construction that can be built by an amateur, such as the client, or indeed a small building firm has been done before. And we think it's a unique and true exemplar and outstanding of its type. Thank you very much for letting me speak and for listening.
Thank you very much. Members, do you have any questions for the speaker? Councillor Moncur? Just unmute yourself, sorry, Councillor.
I just want to congratulate Mr. Lambert on an outstanding design and look forward to the host party should planning permission be granted.
Well,
okay, we'll move on quickly. Okay, is there any Councillor Karimi?
I was just interested in the use of hemp for the building. How does that work, please?
The hemp is grown, obviously. It's like a very tall grass. It's cut into what's called a sheaf, which is short lengths of 4 inches, 100 millimeters long. And it's then mixed up with lime and water, and it's barrowed into form. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Interesting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, any further questions? No? Okay, thank you very much for your time, ladies and gentlemen. We will now move on to Councillor Copplestone. And Lee, if you could please unmute. Oh, you've got that, Jane. Okay, thank you. If you could just please introduce yourself, Councillor Copplestone, and you're aware of the timescale.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair.
You have 5 minutes from now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just for everyone's information, I'm Councillor Copplestone and Coltshall is my ward. The other speakers have spoken in a very erudite way, and I fear after speaking last, I may repeat some of the information that they've already given. The applicant, Mr. Chapman, has a strong connection to Coltshall, having lived there during his childhood, and he purchased the former walled kitchen garden of Coltshall Hall back in 2014. Since then, Mr. Chapman has worked to restore this dilapidated garden, clearing the overgrown vegetation and ivy which was covering and damaging the walls. He has shown dedication to this restoration project, which has been much admired by many local people. Historically, the gardeners employed by large country houses have lived close by to their work, and this is an established and practical solution to manage large kitchen gardens. The applicant therefore proposes to self-build a very modest 110 square metre in floor area live-work dwelling in the northeastern quadrant of the walled garden, with the access along the same track which crossed the adjoining field. The design and construction of this proposed project has been carefully considered with great consideration to the environment, with the aim of reducing carbon emissions as far as possible, and these measures include positioning the building to maximise passive solar gains, using recycled glass for the subbase to the building and footings, and a low embodied carbon lime-based floor construction. The main construction will utilise natural hemp for walls and roof and a reclaimed timber throughout the building, with the aim of achieving high thermal efficiency, lower running costs and a lower carbon footprint. The scheme will also utilise solar PV for electricity generation and a ground source heat pump. The water supply will be via a private deep borehole. The architect is confident the construction of this simple self-build project can be built by an unskilled individual, and the scheme provides the opportunity for this heritage asset to be preserved for future generations. The new dwelling house will be visually contained inside the walled garden and therefore will not cause impact to the character of the village landscape and the conservation area. If approved, this will be a great example to others that self-building, whilst employing green building techniques with the aim of reducing carbon, is cost-effective and affordable method of construction, whilst achieving a highly environmentally sustainable home. I therefore support this application wholeheartedly and ask you to approve this exemplar self-build project and therefore the conservation of the walled garden for future generations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Copplestone. Members, excuse me, members, do you have any questions for the councillor? No? Okay, thank you very much for your time. Okay, members, we will now go into discussion. If I can just remind you that, excuse me, you will all remain on mute at the committee. If you should have any comments or questions that you would like to ask, please raise your hands or put your request into the chat and Leah will advise me. If it's necessary during the discussion, Officer Lincoln and Officer Harris will be here to advise on any questions that you might have. Members, do you have any questions?
Councillor Moncur had his hand raised, and also Councillor Kumi Govinlu has a hand raised. Oh, and Councillor Ward. Oh.
I'm sorry. Okay, I haven't got COVID. It's okay. Councillor, sorry, who did you say, Leah, first? I was choking at the time. Councillor Moncur.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure everyone's fighting to go with officer recommendation. So, being as I got in first, I shall go with officer recommendation. Sorry, everybody, for jumping in.
I'd like to second that.
I'll third it.
Okay, do you wish to have any discussion in relation to this application?
Nothing from me.
No.
No. Hey.
Councillor Fisher had his hand raised, and also Councillor Folger has his hand raised as well.
Okay. Councillor Fisher? Councillor Ward?
Thank you. Yeah, I really just a matter of saying how important it is, I believe, to support this application. I think walled gardens are excellent, and I do recognise, on the other hand, that the maintenance involved with that's massive expanse of walls. And when you're looking at a project like this, and I do congratulate Mr. Lambert on his on his designs and his suggestions, I think this really does two things. It involves an excellent property, which is environmentally friendly, but also it does ensure the actual the future viability of the walls. It is such an important factor in some of these listed buildings. So yeah, I really do support this 100%.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Fulcher.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an outstanding project, bearing in mind it's in the Coltishall Conservation Area, and I think not only is it very, very suitable for the area, being a single-storey development, and will preserve the wall garden. And I think clearly it is extremely suitable, and I think everybody concerned with it needs to be commended with all the effort that's been put in. And I'm fully support the recommendation. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. And Councillor Ward.
Yeah, so I also think it's an absolutely brilliant plan. I just wanted to ask Nigel Harris, actually. I should have asked earlier, really. Presumably, Mr. Chapman will need to live on site while he's doing this. Has he indicated that? And if so, will he need some sort of mobile home up there? And would we need separate permission for that?
Straight answer is I don't know the answer to the question. Mr. Chapman may live locally anyway, but what I would say, if this is a self-build and he's going to be involved in the building process, then he would have the right to put a mobile home within the walled garden and live in there while he is constructing the dwelling.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Officer Harris, can I just ask, in relation to the timescale, Mr. Chapman and Debbie both said that they felt that there needed to be a longer timescale. What can we do in relation to that, please?
We were going to be pragmatic in any event, and this is in relation to condition 10, I think it was, where we would be looking for a schedule of works to be agreed in relation to the discharge of that condition. So we would work with the applicant in that respect.
Okay, so does that mean that do we need to reconsider these conditions? Are you saying that is the 3-year time limit, is that for them to put the plan forward, or is that for them to put the spade in the ground?
The 3-year time limit is the standard time limit for applications. They have 3 years within which to commence development.
Okay, and so then moving on to condition 10, do we need to put anything in there to say that we're going to be a bit pragmatic about the timescale?
I think you can leave that with officers. We've just got a bullet point headline there in terms of the condition, but I know what's required, a schedule of works, and we can work that up together with the case officer in conjunction with the applicant. And just the other thing to remind members is the slight variation to condition 8 to pick up the point raised in the supplementary schedule to prevent what would be obviously the devastating demolition of the wall. So taking away that permitted development right.
Okay. Right. Has anybody got any further questions? Leah, has anybody asked for something that I haven't seen? Okay. Okay. No. Okay, lovely. Thank you. So it has been proposed.
Oh, sorry. Councillor Brennan's just raised his hand.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, Councillor Brennan. Go ahead.
That's fine, Chair. I did have it up, but it wasn't spotted earlier. I should have gone to the chat.
Sorry.
Yeah, just very quickly, very briefly, I think this is a most excellent and worthy project. The excellent site, and it's going to preserve the walled garden. And I look forward to it coming to completion.
Thank you. And I should have said as well, whenever I was just making my comment, that I think this is absolutely brilliant. I'm assuming that the committee is going to agree. So I look forward to every stage along the way, just to see how things are going to go. But it's very, very exciting. I think it's a fantastic plan, and really commend what you're doing. Thank you very much. Okay, let's move to the vote, please. And it's been proposed by Councillor Mocker and seconded by Councillor Karimi that we should, as a committee, agree to the officer's recommendation to approve this application, subject to conditions as stated on page 68 of your papers. Officer Matthew, could you please go to the vote?
Thank you, Chairman. Yep, so if members could indicate if they are for that recommendation with the slight variation to condition 8, as Nigel mentioned. So that's Councillor Adams.
For.
Councillor Beadle.
For.
Councillor Brennan.
For.
Councillor Fisher.
For.
Councillor Folger.
For.
Councillor Holland.
For.
Councillor Karimi Guvanlu.
For.
Councillor Lawn.
For.
Councillor Moncur.
Sorry, 4.
Councillor Ward.
For.
Chairman, that's unanimously carried. Oh, sorry. Councillor Pratt. Do apologies.
Twice this morning.
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. I'm for it with my compliments to Mr. Lambert.
Thank you. Apologies. That's unanimous, Chairman.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your time this morning. It's really appreciated. And as I said, it's a very exciting application and I really look forward to it progressing. So good luck with that. Thank you very much. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we will move on quickly to our 4th and final application this morning. And it's application number 2020-1320 and it's 6 Aston Road, Helston. And I'd just like to confirm that we do have Emma Griffiths with us. If
yes, we do, yeah.
Lovely, thank you. Thank you, Officer Harris. If you could go to the presentation, please.
Thank you, Chair. So as you say, 6 Alston Road, Helston, proposal for change of use from the industrial unit to a use for indoor recreation and fitness for self-defense training. Just briefly run through the slides. That's the application site. We're at the very end of what's known as the sort of Helston Park industrial estate at the sort of southwestern corner, close to the boundary with administrative boundary with Norwich City Council. That's the application site. Members may be familiar that in June you granted planning permission for change of use of the adjacent employment unit to a doggy swimming pool. And that opened, I think, about a week ago. Just a wider view of the application site. So the site itself is just in this bottom corner here. As I say, it refers to the wider Helston Park Road industrial estate accessed off Drayton High Road. Next slide. Strategic employment area as identified in the committee report. That's the existing ground floor of the unit, simple unit within a run of similar units with roller shutter door and a main entrance door. It's got a level threshold to that access door and then an emergency exit to the rear. Proposed ground floor, simply a reception area, then sort of the fitness area and a WC. I can inform members that actually the floor plan we have received a revised floor plan and that WC has been revised to a DDA compliant WC. Application site, this is the road that leads to Alston Road, then into the area of these sort of communal units, I'll call them, with parking to the front. So the site is on the right-hand side here. That's the application site. That was the roller shutter door and the entrance door I referred to, and that's the adjacent unit, let's say, that's been turned into the dog swimming pool. That was unit 6. Apologies for the shading. And I will leave you on that slide and briefly take you to the report. So I draw members' attention to para 5.3 on page 73 of the agenda that sets out the applicant's specific requirements for this facility, which are in response to COVID-19. He can no longer rent school halls for obvious reasons. This has impacted on his business and is now seeking to locate in a facility that would allow him to continue his business. Just to be noted that the unit has been vacant for about 18 months, a similar scenario which you considered in relation to the adjacent unit when we gave a change of use back in June this year for an alternative use. given the government's changes to the use classes order, which came out recently and with effect from the 1st of September, had this particular application been submitted after the 1st of September, then the application wouldn't be before you, because it would actually be a form of permitted development. The change would have been permitted in any event and wouldn't have required the grant of a planning application, but the application was submitted before the 1st of September, and the small print says that the application has to be determined. So that's the recommendation in front of members. We see this as entirely acceptable, and the recommendation is to approve as set out on page 76. Thank you, Chairman.
Sorry, Sue, you're muted.
I'm sorry, talking to myself again. Okay, apologies. We now move on to our public speaking, and just to advise you that we don't have any representatives from the Parish Council, nor do we have members of the public who wish to voice their objection. However, we do have a public speaker in support of the application. And Officer, would you please unmute Emma Griffiths? She's the agent for the applicant. Emma, thank you for joining us this morning. And I'm not sure if you're aware, but when I've spoken previously, it's to advise you that we don't have a clock, unfortunately, to remind you of the time, but the host will advise you when you have 1 minute from now. Okay, so if you could please introduce yourself, and you have 5 minutes from now.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. My name is Emma Griffiths. I'm agent on this application from Brown & Co, and I attended committee earlier this year to speak on behalf of the unit next door for the doggy paddle unit. So for this application, it's proposed to change the use of the site to allow the applicant to operate their existing self-defence training business. At present, as already mentioned, classes were held at a variety of locations across the city, mostly in school halls and village halls. However, recent events have meant that this is no longer possible, and in order to meet the needs of the business, it's essential to provide suitable new premises. Whilst the proposal would result in the loss of an employment unit within the designated employment area, it would allow for the vacant unit to be brought back into use. This proposal by the applicant represents the only substantial interest in the unit since it was placed on the market in November 2018, alongside Unit 5, which is now obviously occupied by doggy paddle. The work that would be undertaken would be internal and temporary in nature and allow for the unit to revert back to B1 use should the proposed use cease, or to another employment use. Whilst not an employment use per se, the proposal would support 2 full-time jobs, the needs of a small local business, and bring a currently vacant unit back into use. The site's well related to the applicant's current area of operation and is in a highly sustainable location, well connected by footpaths and bus routes, and would therefore reduce the need for attendees to travel by private vehicles. Classes are held in the evenings and at weekends and outside of normal business hours, so it's not anticipated that there would be any conflict with users of the surrounding units. Whilst local planning policies seek to protect designated employment areas, so they too state that the needs of small businesses should in particular be catered for. Additionally, as mentioned, recent changes to planning have meant that if the application had not been submitted at the time it was, and was instead the proposed changes were suggested now, planning permission would not be required, and the change of use could happen without any permission. The proposal would support a small local business which has a significant client base across the city and beyond. It would bring a vacant unit back into use and provide support for the local economy, which now seems important more than ever. So for these reasons, I hope members will approve the application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Members, do you have any questions for the speaker? No? Okay, thank you very much for your time this morning, Emma. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Moncur, did you want to speak?
Sorry, no, this was moving on. This was going to be for night.
Yeah, I had one for Nigel as well.
Okay, right.
That was for
so, yes, so as you're aware, you can all unmute yourself and we can go into discussion. And as I was going to say, Officer Lincoln and Officer Harris is here if you should have any questions. So, for Councillor Moncur, your question, please.
Thank you. This is for Nigel. No, there's not about the restricted times of when the classes can take place. If this was done under permitted development, would there be restrictions on the times? Is the first question. And do we need to put those restrictions in?
Good question. Councillor Moncur.
Thank you.
Very good question.
There's lots of bonus points.
If this was permitted development, no, you wouldn't be imposing conditions. So we have before you an application that does require planning permission currently, but clearly there is a fallback position. I believe reading the report, I mean, primarily those hours of operation, which apparently the applicant has indicated are acceptable to him, stem from comments made by the Highway Authority in terms of sort of the operational side of things. Clearly, though, obviously the operational side of things is to a certain extent dictated by others, and this is a sustainable location with public transport facilities, but we have deemed it necessary, given the comments of the Highway Authority, to recommend that condition. If members want to debate that, obviously that's something that we can discuss.
Okay.
Sorry, Emma, you can't. Sorry, Emma, you've had your time. You can't speak again.
Sorry, I just wanted to note the operation hours. Those are the hours existing. They're not as a result of the comments. Those are the hours the business operate.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Sorry, Councillor. Have you finished, Councillor Moncur?
Go on. Yes. Yeah. Well, go on. You carry on. Carry on.
Councillor Karimi, we can come back to you. Councillor Karimi.
Nigel, you commented about the toilets. What does DBA accessible mean? Or did I get it wrong?
It's disabled access.
Okay, that's fine. That's what I want to check. Thank
With
you.
the wider openings, door openings, etc., and
What does the
turning space.
acronym mean? The DV something, disability something?
Disability. Oh, you got me now.
Disability Discrimination Act.
Yes. Act. That's it.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Beadle. Okay, and anyone else got any further questions? Okay, Councillor Moncur.
Okay, can we? I'm happy to propose officer's recommendation, but I'd like to get the hours of restrictions taken off, so we're not affecting this guy's business should he wish to open on a Sunday or on a bank holiday. We had this before in the gym in Sproston, and I don't see any reason to restrict the guy's business when the other businesses all around him can have people come and go at any time.
I'm happy to second it with that recommendation, please, if that's, or that condition, please, that we don't have any restriction on his time. So, so I'm seconding it. Councillor Moncur's proposed it. I'm seconding it. And Councillor Ward, did you have your hand up?
I was just going to second it on their recommendation as well. So, yeah.
Okay. So are you happy with things, Officer Harris or Officer Lincoln? Is there anything that you need to say before we go to the vote? If nobody else has got anything they want to comment on?
No, do we just want to clarify? So, Nigel, we are removing condition
4
and 5.
5.
Yeah.
So it's approval just subject to conditions 1, 2, and
2
3.
and 3.
Yeah.
Okay. If there's there's nothing else that anybody wants to say. No. Okay. Wonderful. I think that we can go to the vote on this one. And members, it's been proposed by Councillor Moncur, seconded by myself, and we've made an amendment to the conditions that we will approve, subject to the conditions of 1, 2, and 3 of the officer's recommendation, set out on page 76 of your papers. Officer Matthews, could I please ask you to do the vote?
Thank you, Chairman. So if you could indicate if you are for the recommendation for approval with the amended condition, removal of conditions 4 and 5. Councillor Adams?
For.
Councillor Beadle?
For.
Councillor Brennan?
For.
Councillor Fisher?
For.
Councillor Folger?
Councillor Ford, you need to unmute.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Holland?
For.
Councillor Karimi Guvenlu?
For.
Councillor Lawn?
For.
Councillor Moncur?
For.
Councillor Pratton?
For.
Councillor Ward?
For.
That's carried unanimously, Chairman.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, Emma, for your time this morning. And that brings all of our concludes all of our applications for today. And we'll now move on to agenda item number 6, appeals received and lodged, and we've got those on page 77 of your papers. So, Councillor Harris or Lincoln, Officer Lincoln or Harris, would you like to just go through those, please?
I can just pick up, Chair. I mean, there's the first two are decisions which have been made. Land north of Marsh Road, Halvergate. This was actually the council's first informal hearing by remote access that was handled by Planning Inspectorate. It was a site, no settlement limit, so very unsustainable, and they were promoting 7 dwellings outside of the settlement limit in a conservation area, and we refused it, and the inspector has dismissed the appeal. Unsustainable location, impacting on heritage assets in terms of conservation area and listed building. And then the second one was a written reps appeal against householder refusal. There, a scale of extension which was higher than the existing semi-detached properties was felt to unbalance the properties, and it also had a very large garage projecting to the front that was unduly prominent, and the inspector has dismissed that. And then there's an appeal to note which has been lodged, a written reps appeal in relation to the Buck Public House in relation to a condition requiring approval had not been given for some ANPR cameras in a car park, and that's currently under appeal. Can I just one point? I just want to go off track or off piece slightly. You've heard today the item about the walled garden at Coltishall. Just thing I wanted to raise was the walled garden at Little Plumstead, which may be familiar to some members, and it was a historic walled garden surplus to NHS requirements at Little Plumstead Hospital, and actually we secured parish council ownership of that through a planning application with a developer on site, and actually that walled garden has now been restored, and a community project has delivered a new shop and cafe which opened, I believe, this week. So it
very good.
and another laudable project involving a walled garden in the district. I thought it was quite noteworthy, probably just to raise that today.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you very much for letting me
Well done,
know that.
Nigel.
Okay. Members, do you have any questions in relation to the appeal at all? No? Okay, well, before we close, I just want to make a little announcement, please, or just to make a little note. I'd like to record a message of thank you to one of our long-serving officers who's moved on to other employment. Sarah Utting had been an officer at Broadland for 33 years, served on this planning committee for many, many years, and I would like to, on behalf of the planning committee members, wish her well and good luck in her new employment. And I just wanted it to be recorded that we did appreciate the work that she put into the planning committee, because all of us will be aware that, she spent a lot of time helping us and advising us, just as the wonderful Dawn is doing now. So, it was. I just wanted to make that noted, because I felt that we, under the circumstances of COVID and not meeting each other and various things, I just thought we needed to mention that we did appreciate what she did for us. So,
Thank you, Sue. Yeah. She was a great officer. She spent decades in support of the district council, and it's a great loss to the district council. And I wish her well in her future career.
Yeah, I would echo that, Madam Chairman.
Yeah.
Sarah and I go back a long, long way. She was on the council for 33 years. I've been on beginning to show, I think. But she was a terrific officer. When she was on the planning committee clerk, there were occasions when virtually, due to certain circumstances, she was almost chairing the meeting. And she was absolutely terrific. Some people thought at times she went a little bit too far, but if she did, I think she was doing it because she felt that that was what she had to do to keep the planning committee meeting on track.
She was keeping you in check, Tony.
Was, yes.
I'm not sure anybody's ever quite achieved that yet.
Okay, well, I just wanted to, and I really appreciate all your comments, but that now completes the business of our meeting this morning and brings it to a close.